Doing? Welcome to live stream number 80. Today we're going to talk about split parting lines on plastic injection molded parts. That's a long title. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch today's live stream. It is Thursday. It's the 19th of October 2017. Still waiting for people to come in here. They will come trickle in, but definitely appreciate you guys who are taking the time to watch the recording. Today's topic, I gotta set this up, so just bear with me 2 seconds. Probably about a year ago, I was talking to somebody about doing a plastic injection mold in Fusion 360. And one of my friends was like, Fusion is not really the tool for that kind of, they can be fairly complex. And I decided, hey, watch me, man. So I created a video series on how to do a plastic injection mold. You will find that link down in the description area of the video. So I did that series, how I would design a plastic injection mold in Fusion 360. So if you've never come across that, or you have to design a mold, this is how I would design it. And pretty much how I would design it in any type of CAD software, not just in Fusion. Of course, some of the comments I got was that, well, that mold was way too easy. It was a simple mold, and yes, I admit that, but it was more, of course, to show the whole story. So today we're going to talk about creating parting lines, which is really the hard thing to do when it comes to creating plastic injection molds in any CAD software. Now, some people would say that, Fusion 360 don't have mold tools in it, and that's true. However, most of these mold tools that other CAD programs are using, really doing the same thing as we're going to be doing today. We're just going to do it a little bit, rolling up our sleeves, but get to the same kind of result. So, enough talking. Got people in here in the live stream. Really appreciate it. And for you guys, again, watching the recording, thank you. Give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if you like this. And if it goes a little bit too fast, don't forget that the recording is up on YouTube. You can always go back and watch it again. Enough of me talking. Let's jump into Fusion 360. So there we go. Here is a plastic part that we are going to create a parting line on. And I just brought it in here right out of the get-go. So you can see that there is a little bit more to go on in this one than in the one that I did previously in the mold series. Now, a couple of things, like I literally just brought this part in without doing anything to it. So there's a couple of things I want to start out by doing. First thing, I want to go up here and right click and say that I want to capture the design history, right? So now we kind of capturing things are going down in the history tree down here. That is extremely helpful. Another thing that I just noticed when I bring this part in is it's kind of like gray on white or white on gray. This is one of the things that I used to do all the time when I was working on the shop floor or doing CAD and CAM. I would throw new appearances on my model. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and do that. This is not needed at all. But it's just like one of those things for me that I've always, made life a little bit better. And I used to play around with it, right? Why not throw some bamboo on your part? Makes it a little bit more interesting to look at. And you would like to see that we get some original colors there too. So this makes it a little bit nicer to look at. Though that I'm sure the customer don't want this plastic part made out of bamboo. Okay, let's get to it. So the first thing we got to talk about, and a lot of the things that you're seeing me doing here are somewhat the same as I did in that video series, just with a little bit more complex part. What we're looking to create is a insert that kind of like surrounds this part for this mold. And if you ever have used other tools, other CAD tools, such as SolidWorks or Inventor, you know that there's certain steps you have to go through if you're using those mold tools. So we're just going to go through and use kind of like the same tools as we're going through here. Now, the first thing, I'm not going to worry about, I looked at this part and it looks like there is added some draft to it. Now be aware of that if you go out to inspect up here, there is draft analysis tools inside of a Fusion, so we could definitely check on that. That could be another live stream if we need to do that. And of course, you have draft tools inside of Fusion too. So if you do have to add some draft, and draft is just so the part can come out of the mold. If you have like long straight walls, the plastic will kind of like bind inside of the steel mold. So we're adding a little bit of draft. The other thing that many people have asked me about is the shrink factor of the plastic. So when you put plastic into a mold, it normally shrinks. And the way to do that in CAD is to really just add a scale factor to it. So you can really go in here and you can select your part, and then you can add a scale factor depending on what plastic you're going to be using. And that is not in your CAD software. That's something depending on the material probably is going to use. So many times you will just add a scale factor to the part right out of the gate and have that sitting on here. So with that, we can start creating some of the tools we need. Now there is a couple of things we need to do before we get into before we can divide this up. The first thing is we kind of gotta plug any holes that is inside the part where there normally be like core pins or something inside the part. So through holes, for example, there's a through hole in the center of this part. So we will block those off. And then the second thing we will do is we will create what is called a parting surface. And you will see that just in a second as we get to it. So first thing first, let's talk about clogging up any holes that is in here. Now, I have said before that, I like to be lazy when it comes to CAD and CAM. But, the more complex your model is, the more the software is going to have to handle a lot of different things. And this part is, is fairly complex. It's not totally crazy, but again, there's a lot of stuff going on in this model. So one of the things that I would do when I'm looking at the top down here is all these holes that is in this area right here. There's a bunch of them, 12 or so of them here. If you look at them a little bit closer, they're clearly screw holes for something to be screwed in to something else. So there's counterbore screw holes. Now, we could start creating single surfaces to block these holes off. But because it's pretty obvious to me what this is, I can make my life easier by actually eliminate the holes in this core for this first step. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to select the inside of the face here and hit the delete key on my keyboard. And just by that, Fusion is smart enough to close up that hole in there. And it just gives me a less data. Now I know that when I get further down to working with the insert blocks, after I have done the whole splitting, I know I got to come back here and add these holes. But that's fairly simple. So think about if there's any ways when you're looking at models like this where you can go in and you can select areas where you can simplify the model. It will just help, it will just make it easier for the software. And again, another thing that is important to say as I'm going through deleting these faces on this part, is that this is really like good things in, good things out, or an American saying, bad things in, bad things out. If your model is full of trouble, you probably will have a little bit of a headache doing some of these techniques here. So I'm just going to go in here, hold down Control, and I pretty much selected all those remaining faces. I'm going to hit delete, and you will now see that all those holes have been clogged up there. So I'm just simplifying whatever I can simplify here. Now there is some of them that I definitely want to keep. So one of them is this big center hole because there's going to be a split there. There's also a hole that kind of like comes in at an angle right here. I'm going to leave that. And then there's kind of 4 holes, 2 on each side, over here that I'm going to leave. Now these here are actually just going to probably have some sliders coming in. That could be another live stream. So let's clock these up. Now I'm going to go into the patch area, the surface area inside of Fusion to do this. If this starts to get really complex for you, go into the playlist for the live streams. And if you do Control F, then you can literally search through in there. And if you search like surfaces or something like that in there, you will find we have covered this in the past. So I'm going to go up and do just a simple patch, and I'm just going to create a patch right around that face right there and hit OK. That is how I'm going to close each of these. It's just with a little patch. Right click, create, repeat patch, and I'm just going to select that little patch right there and hit OK. Another thing you will see when I'm working with things like this is that I don't like to multi-select as many things as possible sometimes when you're doing some of these things. It's a little bit easier to take that extra mouse click to say OK and actually get an extra feature down here. So right click, repeat patch, select face, hit OK. So now we kind of like block these up here. Let's go in and do this hole over here. Right click, repeat patch. I'm going to select it right underneath the radius there. And then I'm going to do the big opening here. But probably it's going to take a little bit more than just one click. Just follow the edge around like that there. And I get that patch there. So now we got all that. It's a little bit hard to see on this background here. Let's go back in. Oh, let's go right click. Let's go to appearances. And you will see that it's kind of like we can overwrite the different ones just like that. Okay, now they're all wood color, and we can kind of see that they're all closed off. So that was the first step that we need to do, is close all the holes inside the model so we can kind of create that. Now, and of course, also another thing maybe is a good thing to do is to save up here as you're going along, right? So we can go in here, click save, put a comment in, closed holes, just as a step in there. Okay, another thing I want to tell you is, as you're seeing these operations down here, we have also now in our bodies we have the body, what was the part itself, and then we have all the surface in there. Now, what we want to end up with is two blocks, and I'm not going to be able to I'm not going to be able to complete to do both of them here because it takes a little bit of processing time. But I actually did do it before, so it's like a cooking show, pulling this one out of the oven. So this is what we want to end up with. I just wanted to show it because I think it's important. So this is our plastic part, and we have a core, and we have a cavity in here. So this is where we want to end up. Now, if you have watched the live stream before, I'm a big fan of the combine tool. So let me just go in here and talk about that a little bit. So I'm going to make an offset plane from the bottom here. Just going to draw a plane down, use the offset command. Let me start a sketch on that. And I'm just going to use the S key and a center rectangle. And I'm kind of like going to draw out the boundary of that insert that I want to create. So now you will see we have a sketch down here. Now, if you have watched before and I'm using that combine tool, what we're gonna, and I'm kind of like jump a little bit ahead here, but I just think that this maybe makes sense to some of them. If I go back into a model space and I do a press pull, and I put, well, now it's gonna want to cut because it sees all the material. But if I pull with Q up like this here, and instead of doing a cut, I actually go over here and just say new body. So now I'm actually going to end up with this body here is the part itself. I hit OK again, and we now have another body. What I want to end up using is I want to be able to use this combine tool. And when I'm going to do that, I'm going to select the box that we just created. And the tool bodies, I'm going to select the plastic part itself. And I'm just going to say keep the plastic part, don't consume it. Hit OK, and it doesn't look like anything happened on your screen, but if I turn the part off itself, and we go into the inspection tool, and we do a section analysis, you will see that something happened inside the block. We subtracted we did not subtract it. What did I do? You know what? I probably had it at join. Hang on. Edit feature. I had it at join. Cut between the two parts. Oh, yeah, there we go. So we have the box selected, and we have the part selected, and make it uncut, or you're not getting anything out of it. There we go. All right, let's go back and let's try that again. That was kind of funny. Section analysis. Click on that, and then when I'm dragging here, you see how we actually now, it might be hard to see if you're looking at it through here, but we kind of like have subtracted the part from the block. And that's what we want when we create a mold, right? We now have like kind of this cavity inside of this part here. If I do a section analysis, you can kind of like see how it is there. The problem, the challenge, we don't have any problems. The challenge is that this part, we cannot split it straight across. We actually have to kind of like create a parting line that follows around here. So that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do next here. So we can use that parting line, and we're going to create a surface to split that box. Okay, enough talking. So the way we're going to do this the same way that Inventor or SolidWorks, how their mold tools are doing this. We're just going to do it, like I said, we're going to roll up our sleeves and do it ourselves. So I'm going to do an offset plane from this side over here, and I'm just going to draw it out some kind of you should probably do good distances, right? So I'm going to do like, I don't know, let's do minus 150 millimeters. See, I'm in metric again. I set my default to metric. So now I have this plane sitting out here on the side. Now all I'm going to do on that is I'm going to right click and create a sketch like that. And I'm going to use P for project. Okay? P for project. And I'm going to project this edge that I want to be my parting line. I'm going to click on that. And I'm also going to snap the two radiuses in each end on here. And hit OK. Now, if this went a little bit too fast for you, don't worry. I'm going to have to repeat everything here in here. So what I have now is I have this projected edge that is just projected edges from the model out to that face I created. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a surface between this and that edge. That is really all that your mold tools are doing. So I'm going to go back into my patch. Now here I'm going to use Revolve. The Revolve tool. We talked about the Revolve tool before, and there's no really difference between the surface revolve and the solid revolve, besides that one is a solid and one is a surface. So I'm going to select the edge here on our part and the edge of our profile, and we will get a surface plane right there. Now you could be tempted here to select the next edges and get this whole row. But again, I like to somewhat simplify this. So I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to take, and then my sketch goes away. Turn my sketch back on. I'm going to take my time here and actually select each edge individually and create them like that. And the reason I'm doing this, it might not matter for this, but sometimes when you create multiple edges, your surface starts pulling in itself, and it might not be as precise. So here's the first surface we are going to create. Now you could be tempted to mirror this and or revolve this, and you might get away with it. But again, I don't know where this model comes from, so I'm gonna just repeat the same thing I just did before over on the other side here. Make it 150 out. Right click, create a sketch. I'm gonna flip it around here, and I'm gonna use that same P for project, and just project these edges over on that plane right there. Hit OK. So now I kind of like have the same thing over here, and I'm going to do what you just saw me before. I'm going to go in here and create a loft and select this edge to this edge. Hit OK. Right click. Get my sketch back. Right click, select there, and hit OK to that, and do the last one. Okay. So we are kind of creating this surface that we want to split along that edge. We're creating that manually here. Now, I'm going to repeat the process on the end, though there's going to be a couple of trimmings we got to do. So I'm going to right click. Oh, no. I'm going to go up and create an offset plane. I could actually have done that for the right click, but what the heck. And make one down in the end here. Let's go minus 300. And I'm going to start a sketch there. Create a sketch. I just like to look at it a certain way. Don't mind me. I'm going to select this edge up here as a projected. I'm also going to select this vertical edge here, or almost vertical. I'm going to select this radius, the one on the other side, right here, and the top here. So now I got these. Hit OK. I'm going to spin it around. You can kind of see these here. Let's go into our evolve. No, sorry, loft. And select that edge to that edge. Easy enough. Hit OK. Now then I'm going to select, that's where the trimming comes in. I am going to select this edge and that projected line there. So we get those. Now we're going to have to trim these to each other. We'll do that just in a second. Repeat loft from this edge to this edge. Yes. Take that. So, I mean, this is, this is work, but actually, if you have used, I will say this, we're talking about using mold tools. Let's just finish this. I'll come back to that. So we have this created here. Now we got to trim. You see how we get this piece here and this piece. They're sticking down. So we're going to trim them. So there's a neat trim tool inside of the patch environment. And it works really well. First, it's just looking for a surface trim tool. So I'm going to say I want to trim to this surface. And then I spin it around and I select in here. And if it turns red here, that means that the red is going to go away. I hit OK. And you will see that now I just trimmed that. I'm going to repeat that. Right click, repeat trim. This is my trim tool. This is what I want to go away. Hit OK. So that's how I trim those. Okay, so now I'm going to do the exact same thing down in the other end. We're getting there, folks. We're almost done. Construction plane out, and I said 300, right? And right click, say we're going to create a sketch. I'm going to rotate it, and I'm just going to do the P for project. So what I was saying before was I used the SolidWorks mold tools a lot in the past, and good stuff. Definitely, made some neat stuff with it. I will say though that if you do a lot of molds, you should really check out the Inventor mold tools too, because they are really, I was really impressed with those. I'm actually thinking that I might just have to do a video on the Inventor mold tools because they were pretty neat. Turn that sketch back on. Yeah, I was kind of impressed with how Inventor does that. I have to admit that I hadn't looked at that. So, almost done here. Right click, repeat loft. So let's go in here. This surface to this surface. Okay. And this surface here to this surface. And then we just gotta trim it again. Modify trim. And we're going to use this as our tool, and this is the surface we want to get rid of. Going to right click, repeat trim. I'm going to say this is my tool, and this is the surface I want to get rid of. If I can select it. Hey. Oh, that's interesting. There you go. Get rid of that. And so now we have this trim. Now the last thing we need to do of these surfaces, we actually got to create You see we're missing a 90-degree kind of thing right here. You know what tool would be nice for that? We just talked about it. That would be the sweep tool. So we can actually use the sweep tool, a single path. I'm just going to turn off chain selection. So my profile, doesn't really matter what you select as a profile, is this, and my path is going to be this. And then we get a nice flat surface for that. So we talked about the sweep the other day, so yay for getting a chance to actually use it. We're almost there. And I will also ask this, if any of you guys have a lot of mold knowledge, have anything to add to this, do me a favor, put it in the comments area or in the live stream if you are live. Absolutely, you know, I know there's some people out there who have a lot of knowledge with this kind of stuff. That is really what we need to create to split this mold here, these surfaces. Now, I want to show you a little trick. Because as you can see that I ended up with a lot of surfaces in here in this kind of process. Here's a neat trick. If you select the bottom surface and you hold down shift and you select the top surface, then you will select them all. What is a neat Windows trick. But here's something else. If you right click, you can say you want to create a selection set. So you selected them all, you right click, click selection set, and you end up with a folder up here that is called selection set. And what you can do now, if you want to select all these, is just go up to that folder, click that little icon, and now you've selected them all. That makes life a lot easier. Okay. Last step we're going to do here is you see how I rolled the timeline backwards here? So remember how I created that little combine divide feature before. So now I'm just rolling back to that. So now we have our block back here again. The way we're going to create the cut between our surfaces and I can turn off the model itself, the plastic part itself. So now we have all the surfaces we just created and the block around here. That was the one we created before where we used the Boolean option of combine. I hope this makes sense. What we can do now is there's a neat feature in the model space that is called boundary fill. And I've used it before on the live stream. Actually, if you search, you will find maybe a little bit simpler video using the boundary fill. But what we're going to do is we're going to say that we want to find out where they can make watertight models between our block, the big gray block, and then all those surfaces we just created. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a system. There's going to be some system. I'm going to go up and select our parts here. This is going to take some process power to do this. So I would recommend if you got to split something like this that is a little bit advanced, you might want to do it at the end of the day because it can sit and think a little bit after that. But what I get out of this is actually, I'm just going to go over here and so I selected all our surfaces and our solid body. Go and click on select. You see how I have 3 checkboxes on the screen. And whatever checkboxes I'm selecting, Fusion will make a watertight model. Now the center one is actually our part shape itself. So I'm not really interested in that. But what I do get is I get a bottom, a cavity, and or a core. This would be the core. And I get a cavity up here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the checkbox. And then when I hit OK, it's going to start processing this. Now, I'm going to say this again. This does take a little bit of resources. And your computer might sit for a little bit thinking about this. I'm going to go ahead and hit it OK here. When I tested this last time, it did take probably about 3 or 4 minutes to just do one half. Because what Fusion now has to do is it has to figure out all these watertight surfaces or all these surfaces and make a watertight model. Like I showed you before, I probably can't switch over now. But if you go back to the beginning of the where I showed you that I did those 2 halves. So that is kind of the steps to go through and do something like this. Now I'm going to keep this running while I'm wrapping this live stream up. Number 80, folks. This live stream up here. I hope this was somewhat useful. Again, if you're watching the recording, I really appreciate it. Don't forget, you can go back and re-watch it. And you can actually, inside of YouTube, you can set it to like speed it up and play it at 1.5 or 2 times speed, so you can get through it a little bit quicker. So I hope this was useful. Don't forget, down in the description area you will find the video series. So if you are kind of interested to see how I would attack a full plastic injection mold inside of Fusion, that's where that is. Also, my email address is in there. If you are looking, if you have any specific topics you would like to see in the live stream, do me a favor, send an email with that. I really appreciate it, folks. We got 76 people in here. We're just hitting the half an hour right now. This is awesome. This computer is working. I'm just going to let it work. But tomorrow, let's talk about tomorrow. Tomorrow's CAM. Tomorrow we're going to talk about how to pick up on your CNC machine. We're going to talk about work offset with G54, G55, and all that. So that is tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Guys, thank you so much. Hope you like this. Thumbs up, thumbs down. And if you haven't already, of course, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe. I'm going to end the broadcast and jump into the live stream and say hi to everybody. Thank you so much.